that in mind. And good morning, Rashida. You're still there. Oh, we lost her. So I'm Cynthia Bell.
She's here.
Oh, yay.
Hi,
Hi,
good
how
morning.
are you? And
Good evening.
you really need to run for something. Just my opinion.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I have some written remarks here. I'm Cynthia Bell, President of the League of Women Voters of the Mid-Hudson region, and I welcome you to this morning's Running for Office event. Dare Thompson, who is past state president and past local president and very competent, will be assisting here. She'll be kind of monitoring the chat and sharing with everybody what people are writing. So we invite everyone to post their comments and questions there. So mute your microphones unless you're speaking. And if you have a question or comment, you can raise your hand if you like, or you can use the chat. So I want to start with our—
Cindy, I'm not going
Yeah.
to share everything that goes in the chat. Hellos.
No,
and so forth.
you
Okay,
you are,
you know.
it's on you. Yes, but thank you. Yes, and please don't. The League of Women, so this is our mission statements, which I start all of our events off with. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. So with us today, we have Ulster County Board of Elections Commissioner Ashley Dittis and John Quigley, both the Republican and the Democratic commissioners. Also, we're joined by March Gallagher in her second term as Ulster County Comptroller, Genesis Ramos of Orange County, newly elected legislator, and Katie Tobin, former deputy mayor of New Paltz and current director of the Benjamin Center. And Katie, your bio is just too long. Very accomplished. And they'll be sharing their experiences running successfully for office. So we're going to start off with a primer of the rules and regulations, like nuts and bolts of the information on how to get on the ballot. And so I'm going to turn this over to Ashley Dittis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. I'm going to share my screen now because we have a presentation. So I won't be able to see any of your questions. John and I will talk about running for office. This is very much a technical Board of Elections focused presentation. So hold on a second. Where is my—
I'll keep an eye on the questions for you.
Yeah, John, you can watch the questions because I got to run the show. All right. So this is something that we presented last year in this group. We thought that it was very helpful. So we updated it for 2022 with all of the new information based off of what we know so far. It is kind of a unique year because we're going through redistricting, which I'll touch upon in a couple minutes, but this is current, up-to-date, how to run for office. So the first thing we'll talk about, and I'm sorry, I know we have someone from California, but this is a very New York focused presentation because we this is our bread and butter here in New York. So things run a little bit differently state to state, but in New York State, our elections, we have two main elections. Our primary election is now in June. It's been in June for a couple of years, and this year it's going to land on June 28th. Hours of voting 6 to 9, and then we'll have early voting for the 9 days beforehand, the 18th to the 26th. This year, there's going to be some expansion of early voting hours that were passed last year. So once we set our schedule, we'll have all of that information posted. Our primaries are only required if more than the allocated amount of candidates file petitions for a designating party line. What does that mean? Well, in New York State, we have 4 designated parties: the Democrats, the Republicans, the Conservatives, and the Working Families Party. In New York State, we have closed primaries, so only enrolled voters in those political parties can participate in a primary if one has to happen. So that's going to be our first main focus, that election event that's coming up later on this spring, early summer. Our general election this year is the latest it can possibly be. Fun fact, this is the latest date a general election can fall on, and that is November 8th. Our hours are also 6 to 9 for that election. Our early voting will begin October 29th, and it will end on November 6th. As we all know, general elections are the ultimate decider of who wins and serves in public office, and all voters are invited to participate in that general election.
I'll just leave a side note. The last date to change your party affiliation, if you choose to participate in one of these parties' primaries for this year, will be February 14th. And you'll have that opportunity to get that in so that should a party have a primary, you will be able to participate.
Valentine's Day, so don't forget your candies, your cookies, your chocolates, and checking what party you're in if you want to
Love and
participate in a
politics.
primary. So what's on the ballot in 2022? Administered by our office, what we will see on our ballot in November is our United States Senate. Chuck Schumer is up for election this year, so he'll be on the ballot against an opponent. I don't know who that will be, but that will all be figured out, I'm sure, shortly. We'll have our United States Congress members on the ballot, our statewide offices, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and comptroller. We also have at least one state Supreme Court justice, which I didn't list here, but that will be on the ballot. And then we'll have our New York State Senate and Assembly. Those are our state branches of our legislature. In Ulster County, we'll have a sheriff on the ballot. I know we have someone here from at least Orange County. I'm not sure if they have any countywide offices up this year, but that is what Ulster County's scope will look like. Other sub-districts is what we call them, villages, school districts, fire, and library. They have their own schedule of having their elections. Our school boards have their elections in May. We help them with those elections, so they use our equipment, but they run their election legally. Their clerks are in charge of that election. The libraries have they have a little more time. They have between April and July. It's kind of like a caucus. They have a window to have their elections. Fire elections happen in December. Our office is starting to help out with library and hopefully fire districts. We're trying to make voting sort of a uniform experience, at least in Ulster County, so that when you go for these other kinds of elections, you interact with that same equipment. So that's something that we're looking at doing this year. But again, that's a county by county effort, at least in New York.
And just to cover all our bases, if anybody out there is interested in running for local office, such as town or city government, those are mostly done in what we call odd years. So we'll switch back and forth between even and odd years for the primary of how our cycles are ran, with state, federal office in even years, and those local races primarily focusing on those odd years.
So on the previous slide, I had two of the categories with a star next to it. That was our US Congress and our New York State Senate and Assembly. Those offices, those political subdivisions, are subject to a process of redistricting. This year, those new lines will be introduced. It is something that we don't do every year. Obviously, it's every 10 years following our census. Other states have already established their congressional lines, their state lines. We're a little bit later than most. That's due to our process of doing it. There's an independent redistricting commission. That's appointees that are appointed from both of the two major political parties. I'm sure this group is more in tune than most that I speak with, but they are gridlocked at the moment. They are not in agreement. They've submitted two sets of maps, not a uniform set. So those maps go in front of the state legislature. They've been rejected once. So the first round was rejected. The second round will be submitted I believe it's January 25th. So this coming week, we'll see new maps. Then that will go to the legislature. Again, if they reject this second set of maps, then the legislature is empowered to draw the district maps themselves. We then will see something around mid-February, and then we'll see what happens thereafter. Lawsuits may be filed. So at the board level, for us and for candidates that are wanting to run for those offices, everyone's a little bit at a standstill. We kind of know around about what they might look like, but until we have solid lines, we at the board level, so we don't draw the lines ourselves, but we get the final product, and then we apply those to all of the affected voters, and we change their the districts that they reside in, which is also a somewhat lengthy process. Luckily, we have technology to help us do that, but it is very meticulous and we don't want to make any mistakes. So it can be a very stressful time for us. I was around 10 years ago for the last redistricting process that we did at the Board of Elections. For the state, it wasn't as difficult. For the county legislature, because it's smaller districts, it can be difficult. So we will see. We're doing everything we can at our office to prepare for it, but we really are sort of in a holding period, and we're waiting to see what those end up looking like. So that's a lot of uncertainty, especially for candidates. They want to know what voters they need to talk to, and they really can't right now. And also, as soon as this is done, they have to turn around and get petition signatures, and they need to know who can sign their petitions. So it is a somewhat hectic feeling right now, but I'm trying to stay positive and optimistic that we will get it and
Fingers
not
crossed this doesn't
tear
impact the
all of our
town.
hair out. Do you want to talk about any of that? It gives me nightmares, but you can talk about it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would simply say the only caveat to this redistricting is that we are hopeful it will not impact the primary or the petition process. And this is what has us on our toes right now, because it's what the candidates, it's the information that the candidates need that unfortunately we can't provide them with.
Just to let you know, the League of Women Voters has been very active throughout the state, and we do have someone locally looking in on that process.
That's awesome.
That's so important to have other outside groups looking at what is going on. So thank you for doing that. So let's talk about the next steps. If you're going to be running for office, you should definitely make sure that you are qualified to run for the specific office that you're looking to jump into. General qualifications are being a citizen of the United States, 18 years old. Some offices have different age requirements, but by and large, 18 is pretty much the standard across the board. And then being a resident of the area that you're going to represent when you assume office. So that can fluctuate a little bit. So for example, for United States Congress, you don't have to reside in the political subdivision. You have to reside in New York State. That is an interesting footnote held over from historical perspective. I don't think these days anyone would get elected if they didn't live in their political subdivision, but that is what the requirement is. For the Senate and the Assembly for New York State, you must be a resident of New York State for 5 years and in the political subdivision for the last 12 months. In a redistricting year, because that might change a little bit, you have to live in the county that the district represents. So some people have moved in the past if they got carved out. People hop around, but those are the general requirements, and then some special ones. And we have our county legislature. That'll be next year. We just came off of a legislative year. In Ulster County, the candidate has to be a resident of the legislative district while they're running for office and then throughout their term. That comes from the county charter. So it's always important to reference the documents that govern the office that you're seeking. This is a federal year, so by and large, that's the United States and the New York State Constitution. All right, and then the document that guides, it's our guiding light throughout the political cycle, and that is our political calendar. This is something that the State Board of Elections publishes every January, and it cites all of the New York State election law that regulates and determines where these dates fall. This year, we have a draft political calendar. Let me see if I can, hold on a second. Let me get back to that
Okay.
slide real quick. See if this works. Here it is. So this is on our website. I'm pulling it up right now. See if the website's working today.
Takes
This
nap time
is,
again.
it is, here it is. This is the political calendar that was publicized. I think we've had it for a week and a half. And there's this big note right here in green that because of the redistricting year, this calendar is subject to change by the legislature. And they make that very obvious when you're looking at this, that if, for example, with redistricting, if they do end up getting sued or they don't have maps ready by the dates that they've prescribed for petitioning, the state can take action through legislation to amend the dates and perhaps make the petitioning start date a little bit later, maybe 2 weeks later. Maybe they would reduce the signature requirements for the various offices. If they were to do that, this calendar would be amended and we would republish it with the new information. So if you are running for office, you should set this as a favorite in your bookmarks and then check it periodically, check it before you go to do anything that is relating to ballot access, your petitioning timeframes, so that you aren't doing something accidentally based off of bad old information. So this is something that if it does stick, these will be our dates. But in the event that we have to amend it, this will be changed and amended. Now let me get back to the PowerPoint. All right. So I'm just going to take a step back because I've said a lot of terminology that maybe not everybody is aware of or familiar with. Petitions, caucuses, those are the two ballot access mechanisms for how you appear, how you get your name on the ballot. Petitions are required for county, city, statewide offices. Petitions are carried and filed with the Board of Elections. That's what makes a primary happen in June. Petitions equal primary. Caucuses never lead to a primary. Those are
Resolved then and there.
that is the election. It takes the place of a primary. Those are for local municipal office. Now, I should have updated this to talk about some of the statewide offices because at least for the designated parties, there is a step that would surpass both a petition. They would never caucus for this, but it's sort of like a caucus. Petitions can be exempt for the office of governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, comptroller, and the Senate, US Senate. And that is through the party having a convention and then their delegates, who are state delegates from the various assembly districts, they come together, and if a candidate gets a percentage of the vote at that convention, their name will go directly to the ballot, surpassing the petition process. That's a major benefit for them because their petition thresholds are extremely high for those offices. And that would take a lot of effort, a lot of money. And there's criticism to this that we've heard, people think it's a party process. That's not fair, but the law allows it, the parties allow it, and that's what happens. So I'm just telling you how it happens. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but that is how a lot of our candidates for those higher offices this year will get on the ballot. You're not going to have people coming and asking you to sign a petition for Kathy Hochul because we can presume that as the current governor and popular within the Democratic Party, that she will not have to petition, that she will go right to the ballot through that process when the state Democratic Committee meets. If people don't meet the threshold, then they have to go and petition to force a primary. That could happen if, I know there's a bunch of Republicans running, maybe they don't all get to that threshold, they might have to go out and petition. Obviously, none of them want to do that, but that there's a capacity for that to happen.
The key here is we're talking about ballot access. And at the bare minimum, you have a solution in the petition process. And that any candidate who wants to come forward, regardless of what might be portrayed to you through your experience with each party, you have mechanisms available to you to fight for that ballot access.
Absolutely. So here are the dates. The dates are really important to make sure that if you're running, you have those dates on your calendar. Again, subject to change, but hopefully they don't change because it's a good time frame for all of this to happen. There's plenty of time to get petition signatures. The first day would be March 1st. Filing dates would be the April 4th through the 7th. And then April 11th is an important date for candidates who are seeking to be cross-endorsed by other parties. They would have to accept those separate party lines and be authorized by those parties. So if you're running for office, these are your highlights of your year for ballot access. This is what a designating petition looks like. We have this on our website as a fillable PDF. So anybody running for office that requires a designating petition, we provide this so that folks don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can make a petition off of this template, and it is exactly conforming to what the election law requires. That is election law 6-132. So a candidate would go through, they would say what party they're running for, the election date. This is important to know. The election date on a designating petition is always the primary. That's for a designating petition because those designated parties have to have a primary mechanism. So that date is the primary. We've seen people make that mistake before. And if you do that and you go to file your petition, it could render your petition invalid. So it's really important if you're going to be running for one of those four major parties that you put that June 28th, 2022 date. Then you would put your name, the office that you're running for, your residential address. In this box, you can designate a committee to fill vacancies. Never a bad idea. It gives you the ability to appoint someone else in the event that you are unable to run for office. And then down here is where the voters would sign. Who can sign? Any enrolled voter who is registered in the political party, who is registered to vote within that political subdivision. So your Senate district, your Assembly district, for the county office, any voter who lives in the county who's within that party. Who can go around and carry petitions? Any enrolled voter in New York State who's in that political party can witness a petition. If you are not, but you are a notary public, you can also do it. You just have to administer an oath to your voters. Candidates can carry petitions for themselves and for others. That is something that we've heard a lot. Candidates don't think that they can do that. They certainly can. And then a really popular question we get is, who makes my petitions? Well, if you are endorsed by a political party, they will offer you assistance in making your petition. If you are not, or even if you are and you want to have us check it for you, the Board of Elections is a resource for candidates. We are here to help. We can look at your petition before you go out and get signatures to make sure that it meets all of those statutory requirements. We want to make sure at our Board of Elections that people are going and doing, they have everything ready to go. Everybody's got equal and fair treatment. And the biggest step is starting this process on the right foot. So we, especially in local years when candidates have never run before, we get a lot of questions about this, and we love to make sure that everybody has their petitions looking shipshape so that all they have to do is go and do the hard work, which is getting people to sign those petitions. How many signatures do you need to get? Well, that is stipulated by both threshold requirements this is right from that political calendar, this section right here. If that is not listed, then it would go to your 5% of your enrolled voters for your political subdivision. Local boards calculate the local office numbers on February 21st. We will publicize those on our website so that voters or candidates know how many signatures they have to get well before that March 1st deadline. We have minimum thresholds. So for a county-wide office, for the Democrats, it would be a lot more than 1,000 signatures, but because there is a cutoff, it goes down to that 1,000. Same thing for your state senate, that's 1,000 signatures. Your assembly districts are 500 signatures. Let's see, where's Congress? Congress is 1,250 signatures. Those are breakers, so it's less than what normally you would have to get if you went by the 5%. If you're going to run in the entire state, you have to get 15,000 signatures. That's a lot of signatures, but with a state full of voters, if you've got an organized machine, you can certainly get it done. I always recommend to candidates to double your number so that you can withstand anyone challenging your petitions. What is that? We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but don't get scared. What do you need when you go to petition? You need a good list so that you know who can sign. You can get those lists from our office, from the Board of Elections. Terminology that we use is a walk list or asking for it in street order. This way, so that when you're looking at your list and when you're out there knocking on doors, you can go in the order of a street that you're on. That's traditionally what people do to get petition signatures. They go from house to house to house, and so they ask for a walk list. A walk list can also be sent to you with phone numbers so that you can call somebody up before you go knock on their door. That's something I always recommended, but now in the era of the pandemic, I recommend it more strongly because different people have different comfortability levels with somebody just coming and knocking on their door. All of the people that petition have kind of adapted to the pandemic and how to do it. So doing petitioning safely is something that we've sort of grown accustomed to. There's different ways of doing it, but make sure that you have that in your mind when you go to do your petitions. Another helpful hint is obviously, this is obvious to me, but we've seen situations in the past. Only let the voter sign that's in front of you. You are witnessing the signature, so you need to be seeing them sign it. Don't let the voter run in their house and come back with 6 signatures that maybe all look the same, because then you can't say for certainty that all of those people signed and that they just didn't write all of their family members' names down. That has happened in the past. We've gone through court cases where that's happened. We don't like to see it. Know your rules. So again, if you're going to run for office, set up a time with your local Board of Elections commissioners. They will run through the rules with you so that you are prepared. You won't be surprised by anything. You can ask us at our office, even if you're not running in Ulster County, we don't mind. We are a resource, and our website has a lot of information on it that can answer these questions for you. Filing is a stressful time of year for candidates. Those will be the 4th through the 7th. Make sure you know where to file your petitions. Specifically this year, they can be filed in 2 places, either your local Board of Elections, or mostly where they will be filed this year is in Albany at the State Board of Elections. If you're going to be going to file, I recommend filing in person. I know people have put them in the mail before. That is okay, you can. make sure you, if you are going to do that, put a tracking number on it so you know where it is. The board has to get the petitions on time, especially if you're mailing it. There's a window that has to be received, which is why I recommend bringing them in person and handing them over to the clerks of the Board of Elections. That way, you know they're there. They will give you a receipt so that you have proof that you filed timely. I recommend that, even if it means you gotta jump in the car and go up to Pearl Street in Albany to file at the State Board of Elections. A cover sheet is required on petition volumes that have 10 or more pages. Pages need to be bound. They need to connect them. We have sample cover sheets. We can help candidates make their cover sheets so that they conform to the rules. And when you go to file, the board, either the state board or our board, will ask you if you're ready to file. Once you say yes, you can't take them back and fix anything. So it's really important that you are truly ready to file those petitions. So once you're filed, what happens next? If you need to file an acceptance, that would be if you're not registered in the party which has nominated you. Let's say you are a Republican and the Conservatives want to cross endorse you, you would have to file a certificate of acceptance, and that would be due by April 11th. The Conservative Party, in my example, would have to authorize your candidacy because you're not in the Conservative Party. Those are filed by party chairmans, party chair people, and they allow you to appear on their ballot line. If they do not give that to you, your petition is not going to get you on the ballot by itself, and you will not appear on that ballot line. You have to get authorized. There is an exemption for those, and that's if you're running for judicial office, but outside of judges, everybody has to get authorized. If you're personally registered in the party, let's say you're a Democrat, you want to run on the Democratic line, you don't have to file acceptance and you don't have to be authorized. You will, your enrollment gets you onto the ballot. I said a few minutes ago that your petitions could be challenged, which is why I recommend you double your signatures. That process, it can happen at the board level. That's really where we see a lot of the challenges happen. Once the petition is filed, there's a 3-day window that starts, and that will allow your petition to be generally objected to. It's a form that is submitted by a duly qualified voter. Doesn't matter what party they're in, they can object to your petition as long as they live in the district that you're running in. Once the general objection is filed, there's 6 days for that person to file specific objections. That's where they list out all of the things that they think are wrong with your petition. Biggest thing would be having voters sign that we're not qualified to sign. Maybe there was a fatal error. Maybe you put the election date November 8th on your petition and you needed to put June 28th. That would be a specific objection. Once the boards collect those, we will have a hearing where both commissioners will make rulings on those specific objections. If they rule that your petition doesn't meet the standard, they will say that your petition is invalid and you are not going to be on the ballot. Maybe they'll uphold it. It's good. Those objections were not the standards that we have under the law. Your petition stands. If the commissioners don't agree, well, if they're split, and this does happen, then the petition is presumed valid, and it would get you still on the ballot. If either party doesn't agree to the board's rulings, they can go to court and file a lawsuit, and a judge would hear those arguments, and then they would make a determination. If they don't like that determination, it can keep going to a higher court, the Court of Appeals, and it can actually become a quite lengthy process. So an April 7th petition turn-in deadline will maybe sometimes result in not knowing who's going to be on the ballot until early May. We've seen that in the past, and it's why we harp so much on making sure that your petitions are good from the onset and that you don't have to worry about going to court, spending money on a lawyer, all of those fun and painful things. We put out general forms for this general objection and the specific objection to guide people who are interested in objecting to petitions on how to fill out and file those. We will guide you through that process and let you know how to fill out the form, but the onus on objecting to the petitions is up to the objector. They have to make sure that they are going through, combing through the petitions and marking down all of the things that they think are wrong with it. So that's designating petitions mostly. There's other petitions, that two other ones that will get somebody on the ballot. There's an opportunity to ballot petition. This is a petition that will force a primary write-in contest. Their signature requirements are the same as for designating petitions. You're trying to force your name to be on a designated line, so that's why the signature thresholds are the same. The witness requirements are the same. The difference is the calendar. March 22nd is the first day for voters to sign those. Those same voters are eligible to sign an opportunity to ballot petition. If they have signed a previous petition for the same office, they cannot sign an opportunity to ballot petition. They must be filed by April 14th. There's a change to this rule that is effective this year that we have not seen in a real life scenario yet, but the state legislature has changed the opportunity to ballot process. There are going to no longer be write-in votes counted for candidates who are not registered in the party already, which you might be asking yourself, what's the point of doing an opportunity to ballot petition if I'm in the party? Why don't I just do a designating petition? Yes, that would be the answer, because now as a Democrat, you can't petition to be on a working families line through an opportunity to ballot. Those write-in votes will not be valid for you if people go to write your name in. So there really is, this used to be used for people to, and I'm using quotes, steal party lines. This has been sort of legislated out of existence by the state. So you can't really steal party line anymore. You have to get authorized. If you do an opportunity to ballot as a non-party enrolled member, your votes will not count. So we'll probably will have questions about that, but that is the new change. And we'll see how it filters down to the candidates, but that is something that they did last year. The third and final mechanism through petitions is independent nominating petitions. This is a petition that creates a new party. The candidate comes up with their own name. There are some rules about words you can't use, which we could go through with a candidate if they decided to run. New York State, any part of another party. So for example, you can't say any use of Democrat, Republican, conservative, working families, that's not allowed. Those signature requirements for these are based on a percentage of votes in the last governor's election, which was back in 2018. It's 5% of those votes cast in those various political subdivisions. The state board, the county boards publicize those signature requirements on their websites. Before you do this, you should weigh if this is right for your race. In New York, we're not allowed to just add as many independent lines as someone submits petitions for. If you are already going to be on the Democratic line, the working families line, or the Republican conservative line, it's not going to create a new line for you if you carry two of those other designated lines. Instead, it commingles with the lower party line that you have, and it doesn't really get you a third placement. It would just commingle with your second placement. So that's why a lot of people don't do it. It is a lot of work. You have to get quite a few signatures. So independent petitions are not very popular, but we do see them, especially if somebody is not endorsed by any of those parties and they want to run for Congress, Senate, Assembly, they will create their own party line and establish themselves as an independent candidate. These petitions The date on those will be the election date in November, because there is no primary for a party that you just created. So you would instead put November 8th on those petitions. And that's why the dates are a little bit later, April 19th. And you've got quite a long time to hand them in till the end of May. And that's when we'll know early June who all of our candidates are for all of these offices. So that's petitions. That's one set. Caucuses happen very rarely in even years, but there are some local offices that we know of in Ulster County that will have, because of people getting elected to other offices that were serving already in towns, or judges, their cycle falls in this year, they will be on the ballot. So for those towns that caucus, they will be holding their caucuses between March 1st and July 28th for those special cases. August 1st is the last day for candidates to accept or decline a nomination. Caucus lengths are pretty long. Those are for town offices, Democrat, Republican, Conservative, working families where they have town committees, they will do it. I will say working families in Ulster County doesn't have any town committees. So if you're going to run for any of those town offices, you need to petition if you want to get on that line. And for the Conservative Party, it's a hit or miss if the town has a town Conservative Party. So you should check with your Conservative Party chair to see how you have to do it if you're going to run for town office and you want that line. The Democratic Party, a lot of our towns have opted to do a petitioning process. So if you don't know, don't assume that you caucus. You should find out. You can call the board. We can tell you who caucuses, who petitions. We can walk you through that. John, do any of your towns petition? I can't remember. I know they used to, but some have changed.
They're all caucuses right now. The only one that used to be was Saugerties.
Yeah, Saugerties used to. So Saugerties used to, but they're back. So Republicans all caucus, but Democrats, it's about 60% of them petition now. So you should find out, especially if we're coming into petition season, you should find out if you have to petition for those local offices. So back to the caucus, it's an open meeting conducted by the political party. We do not run these caucuses. The political parties within those towns do. They will notice the caucus. This is the caucus notice right here. They will file that with our office, with the local town clerk, and they will either put it in the newspaper or they will circulate it in 10 public places within the township. Only eligible enrolled voters of the town can go and participate in a caucus. It's oftentimes outside at a park, a big public meeting where people are nominated. A lot of towns will then have a party or a picnic after. So it's very much a community event. Through COVID, a lot of towns have installed in their bylaws the ability to have a caucus virtually. If that is in your bylaws, you can have it. Who decides when it happens? Well, the chair of that local town committee will decide when it happens. They will file that caucus notice. Again, only the enrolled party voters in that party who are physically at the caucus can participate. Unlike a primary, there is no absentee voting. You have to be there, and they don't allow for proxy voting. So it can be restrictive in that regard. You have to get to the caucus physically during the time where they're going to be having that election. Who gets to nominate these candidates? Any enrolled voter in that town can nominate someone. And who conducts the vote? Well, at the caucus, they will nominate a chair and secretary. They are appointed to run the caucus and then file all the paperwork. Just like with petitions, we've seen a lot of caucuses go off the rails, and the best way to run a caucus is to follow these 4 steps. Use a good list. You can get that from our office. Know your rules. We put out a caucus packet every year, which goes through all of the rules and regulations so that chairs know how to run the caucus. Find an accessible location. So a caucus has to be physically held within the town. We've had caucuses where it was right over our town line at a library that was found to be not valid. They had to redo the caucus. It should be held in a public space that is known and accessible to all voters. That's physical accessibility, that's ability to get to the caucus itself, make sure that you have all of your things ready to go for voting of different needs. With COVID, there were executive orders that allowed for them to happen virtually on Zoom. Those executive orders have lapsed. So if they are not in your bylaws of your town, you should amend your bylaws if you're thinking of doing a virtual caucus. Conducting a vote virtually can be also difficult. There are tools that you can use. There's one that I know that's called OPA where you can conduct a virtual vote. So that could be tricky for towns that are going to caucus through Zoom or WebEx or whatever platform they're going to use. And if you are going to caucus virtually, you have to have the URL to your caucus listed on your caucus notice. Otherwise, it's not going to be valid. People need to be able to access the caucus, so you have to put that information out there to the public. After you win a caucus, it's a lot like getting nominated on a petition. There's a certificate that says that you were nominated. That is due by July 28th. You have to file an acceptance if you're not registered in the party that has nominated you, so that you would have to do that by August 1st. You're not required to be authorized. You won the caucus. That's something that we get authorizations for caucuses. We've let them file them, but they are not required. It's not like a petition. You won the caucus. The voters voted you at the caucus to be on the ballot. All of these forms, again, can be found on our website, as well as the State Board of Elections website. And we'll also publicize that caucus packet so that everybody knows what the rules are before they go and do their caucus. So whether you get nominated by a petition or you get nominated at a caucus, we will certify your candidacy. We'll send you an official letter saying such and how your name is going to appear on the ballot. If you want your name to appear differently, you can let us know. There is some latitude with how your name can appear on the ballot. If your name is Jennifer and you want to appear as Jen, that's okay. Just let us know before August 1st so that we can enter that into the record and have the name appear as you would like it to. Candidates raise and spend money all the time. That's just a part of running for office. We get a lot of questions about this. Do I have to register my candidacy? Things like that. For all of the New York offices and lower offices, you don't have to declare your candidacy, but if you raise or spend even $1, you have to start filing with the State Board of Elections your campaign finances so that everybody knows how much money you have, where the money is coming from, and what you're spending it on. For federal offices, you would be dealing with their federal, the FEC rules, their filing systems a little bit differently. So if you're going to run for Congress or US Senate, you should look into those. If you're running for state or lower, you'll be dealing with the New York State Board of Elections. These are New York State. So step 1, read the campaign finance handbook. Step 2, set up your account. Decide if you or someone else is going to be your treasurer. Some candidates choose to file with their local political party. They wouldn't have to establish a separate account. Some choose to file just as themselves. All of this goes through the New York State Board of Elections. It doesn't go through the county boards. The state runs all of the campaign finance mechanisms, and you have to interact with them. Know your filing dates, know your contribution limits. Those will be calculated in February as well. These are the general disclosure statements. We just got through a big periodic report that was this January 18th. All campaigns are required to file, even if they don't have a primary or general. All candidates are required to file, even if they're not on the office this year, for those periodic reports. If you are spending or raising money through these cycles, there are different deadlines. and you have to follow those. It is very strictly enforced. So make sure that you have this all ready to go. The state does provide guidance. They will do workshops about campaign finance that are very helpful to candidates. It can be a lot of work, but if you get into the routine, it's not as difficult as it might seem. So we'll calculate contribution limits for local offices on February 21st. There are family limits and non-family limits, as well as limits on LLCs and corporations. Family limits are specific relationships to the candidate, spouse, children. It's not your entire family. It's not your aunts and uncles or cousins. It's immediate family members. If you have questions on that, we can tell you exactly what those relationships are. Most candidates that are running for a local office, their limit is $1,000 for non-family members, $1,250 for family members. Across the board, the LLC limits are $5,000 per year. And when someone gives you money, get their information. You're going to need it for reporting. You need to know their residential address and capture that. If you're not doing so digitally, make sure that you are cross-referencing that and getting that information so that when you go to report, you have everything you need and you don't have to play catch up. There are platforms to raise money. The Democrats use Act Blue, the Republicans, their big one is Win Red. Most social media platforms have taken a stance on political ads. You have to go through a pretty rigorous compliance standard to publicize on sites like Facebook. You can't publicize on Twitter, they won't let you. So you have to know the rules and you have to know, you should do that before you really get started. If you're gonna think that you're gonna go and slap a political ad on Facebook a week before the primary and you didn't do any of the paperwork that they require, it's not going to work. You have to plan ahead and make sure that you are getting all of that done. Anything that you do digitally, it's just like when you send a mailer, you have to have a copy of it. The state board will require you to give a copy of those materials when you go to do your campaign finance filings. A big question that we get a lot is, do I have to put a paid for by tag on my advertisements? As a New York State level candidate and below, you do not. It is not required. If you are doing a different kind of campaign finance, which is a independent committee, they have to do that, but candidates do not. And we get that question quite a lot. And the answer is you don't have to put that, but if you want to, you can. It's up to you. Another question that we get a lot from candidates have to do with signs. I get a lot of questions, particularly in the weeks leading up to an election, about where signs go. Can they go there? How do we regulate that? Well, we can't. It is not regulated by us, nor anyone. There was a constitutional case on the federal level a couple years ago. There are no rules on what the sign says, where they can be, how early they can go up, where they go up, particularly if it's on your private property. You can have a sign up all year long if you want to. No one can tell you to take it down. When they put signs up in these public spaces, if that municipality that regulates that space goes and they take it down, well, they can take it down. It's their property. So we get lots of questions about signs. So I just want to set the record straight. I can't go as commissioner, John can't go as commissioner and knock on someone's door and tell them to take their sign off because it's too early. There is no such thing as too early, too late. It's really a freedom of speech issue. We do have the ability to regulate our poll sites on election day and during early voting. And that's when I can take a sign down, and those go back to our electioneering laws. Outside of our poll sites, we have jurisdiction over 100 feet from our poll site entrance. And if there's a political sign there on election day, we'll take that down. All this to say, if you're a candidate, my biggest piece of advice to you is don't obsess over the signs. They're really more for you than they are for anyone else. It makes you feel good when you're driving home and it's all your signs along your roadways. If you have a good campaign manager, they'll make sure that they do that for you so that when you're leaving campaign headquarters on your way home, you feel good about yourself. If someone has a lot of signs, it doesn't mean they're going to win the election. Signs don't vote. It's very much a psychology of running for office. Don't obsess over your signs, obsess over talking to the voters and making sure they know where to vote and that you have convinced them to vote for you. That's my advice as a commissioner to candidates about signs. All right, so who can help you? We obviously can help you. We are like Switzerland, we'll answer all your questions. There are the political parties that can help you. Here are our 4 local Ulster County political party chair people and their websites. So reach out to them. They will be having conventions in February to nominate and endorse candidates. If you're interested in getting on their radar, now's the time to do it. Do not wait. Even if you don't know what your district is going to look like, if you know you want to get on one of these 4 party lines, you need to talk to them now because they are very much in gear and getting ready for those big events. How does the party work? Well, the local party leaders, they hold those conventions for endorsements. They do that before the petitions start. The conservatives and working families, they handle it a little bit differently. They have different presences in local counties to varying degrees. So figure out who those folks are. If you need help figuring out who they are, we have contact information. We can set you on the path. Primarily, the Democrats and the Republicans have working relationships with both of these parties, so they can help you with that as well. If you don't get the support of a party, it's not over for you. Certainly, it is not. The petition process, the caucus process, that is the process for getting on the ballot. The parties are helpful, but they cannot gatekeep and determine who gets or doesn't get on the ballot. We are here to help all of the candidates, even if they're not supported by a party. We go to we go to lengths to make sure that you are getting fair treatment. We want to make sure people have their petitions ready. We don't want to throw people off for silly mistakes. We want the voters to decide at the primary or at the caucus who's going to appear in November on our ballot. We've updated our website a lot in 2021 to give more detailed information. We're still doing that in 2022. We're trying to put as much as we can online. We really feel like that goes a long way with openness and transparency at the board level. So really use this link as a bookmark as well. So you should have 2 bookmarks, your political calendar and your running for office page if you're going to be running in any part of Ulster County. In Ulster, there's myself and John. In Dutchess, you've got Hannah and Eric. In Orange, you have, who's the, I don't know who the Republican is right now.
Courtney.
Courtney and Louise Vandermark. She's great. In Sullivan, you've got Cora and
starts with an M.
anyway, if you're running in any of these other counties, let us know. We have a network of election commissioners. We all talk to each other. So we can set you talking to them. And that is it. One other note is that for a lot of the political parties, they will be doing their own reorganization this year, doing petitions for their membership. If you are interested in becoming a voting member of a local Democratic, Republican, Conservative, Working Families Party, this is the year to do it. The Democrats and Republicans and the Conservatives will petition for their committee people. So that is an ongoing process. Being on a local Democratic or Republican or Conservative committee, you really are serving the constituents who are enrolled in your party, letting them know who's on the ballot, how they can go and vote. So it's a really good way of getting involved in the political process is by joining your local committee. And this is the year where those people are going to be elected to serve in that capacity. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. I know I talked a lot and it's a lot of information, but let's see, how do I stop here? Oh, hello.
Well, that was wonderful. I had questions, and then you answered them.
Oh, good.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
sometimes
much.
that does happen.
Really appreciate. That's excellent. That is, so anybody who's not scared and running away now, take heart, because the board is very, very helpful. We did seem to, pardon?
Ballot access is like that hidden monster that a lot of people don't think about necessarily until almost it's too late. So we definitely like this conversation is important.
It really is. And right now too, because normally we would have liked to put it off for another couple of weeks, but then it's too late. Yeah. And so we will be putting this on our website, so anybody who missed it can enjoy. Okay, so we have a couple of people, and Ashley. Oh,
I'm gonna get them
Ashley,
that
did
link.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I
can do
see that.
Thank you, because I can't. So we do have a couple of people that successfully ran. And Ashley, Genesis, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to know why you decided to run. And what were the high points and the biggest challenges for you?
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here as part of this conversation this morning. I really appreciated it. Why did I choose to run? I mean, there was definitely more than one reason why I chose to run. For me, it really boiled down to wanting to see a change. It boiled down to feeling like myself and a lot of people in my community and the people that I represent in my district, we had enough of the status quo. And we really have all been looking for representation that really really reflects our community. And while, yes, I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Newburgh, and I'm a woman of color, it goes beyond that. It also goes into the fact that I'm very involved in the community. Even before I ran, I've been someone that has volunteered with different organizations, sits on several boards, has worked in my community. And so I had a good understanding and a good pulse, if you will, on what were some of the issues that impact us the most, right? And I think not just in the city of Newburgh, but I would say that across the board, we all want representation and leadership that is visible, that is connected to us, that folks can identify, right? When they see you and say, oh, that's my mayor, that's my legislator, that's my council person. I think everyone wants that, right? And that was one of my biggest challenges in terms of, when I was door knocking, people didn't know what a legislator was. They didn't know who had been representing them for the past 12 years. They just didn't know. And that's something that I would tell people, especially people who are skeptical, I would use that as a prime example. Well, that's what we have to change, right? Like, you should know who's representing you, who's making laws that impact our community, who's voting on things that are going to impact our community. And so for me, it was really about wanting to see that shift in terms of the kind of representation that our community was getting. And then ultimately, representation does matter. It definitely matters. And in a community like Newburgh, where you have about 80% of the population that are folks of color, we do ultimately need people that understand the issues that are specifically impacting us. And I've lived those issues. I didn't just, I've been in nonprofit for the past 11 years. All of my undergraduate studies were in sociology and human services, and I got my master's in public administration. But I think the experience that matters the most is my lived experience. And that when I was door knocking and when I was talking to people in the community, I could understand a lot of what they were saying to me, and understanding a lot of the different issues that are impacting different groups of people in the community, because we're not monolithic, right? No community is monolithic, right? So we may have kind of widespread issues that impact a lot of us, but they still will impact different groups of people differently. And so I will say I'm very proud of my run, my campaign, and ultimately my victory, because it was very historic in nature. I'm the first woman of color that was elected to the Orange County Legislature. So it's incredible to be a trailblazer and pave the way for others that look like me, and let them know, like, this is an opportunity. We belong here, and we should very unapologetically take up this space. But as you all can imagine, being a trailblazer also comes with a lot of responsibility, right? And being real about the challenges, because I did face a lot of challenges, and I had a primary election, and the primary was very challenging. And it didn't bring out the best. It didn't bring out the best from some people in my own party. I definitely had moments where I felt marginalized, in full transparency, from my own party. But that didn't stop me. So I kind of appreciated what Ashley was just saying when she was presenting, like, it's not over for you if you don't get a certain kind of support. It's not. And I think for me, I really just held on to my community, because that's what it was always about for me, right? So I didn't care if I didn't have the support of the establishment, if you will, or the machine. I knew that the people were backing me up, and that in the end, that is what matters the most.
They are very lucky to have you. You represent them. I mean, and truly represent them.
Thank you.
Yeah, so actually we had in the town of Marbletown this year, we had the supervisor ran on the pizza party because he couldn't get his party endorsement and he won. So, just goes to show.
Yeah.
So, yes, there.
We learned that KT can't get on, technical difficulties getting on the Zoom, and she's trying to get back on. So that's where she is. Also, somebody asked a question. I'm not running nor for office, nor will I, but I wanted to know how it's done. What is the allocated amount of candidates? I get it about the parties, but what's allocated amount?
Yeah, so I explained later on in the chat, but that means, when I say that, I mean, there are some offices that are a vote for one. That's what we're used to seeing. Congress, vote for one. But there are some offices, county, our town council, state Supreme Court, those are multi-member districts. So they will have a vote for two. For your town committee people, there's 2 representatives per district. That's going to also be a vote for 2. So there are some offices that people run for where it's the voters are going to be electing multiple people for that particular office. So that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, I see your
Okay.
answer there too. I think that's
Nice.
it.
Let's move on to March. This is your second time around, and so explain, what is it that you why did you get out there and run? Because for comptroller, for sure, for countywide office, that's not easy.
So I'm in the same position as Genesis. I wanted to see a change, and it's actually my 3rd run for office. I lost my first race. I ran for town board in Saugerties in 2003 through the caucus process. I won the caucus. I did not have support of the establishment Democratic Committee. They campaigned against me, actively supporting the conservative candidate, and the party chair for Ulster County brought them up on disloyalty charges, and there were hearings, and they were kicked out of the party. It was extremely vitriolic and challenging, like a horrible experience. And at that time I was like, I am never running for office again. Like, I'm done. But what happened in that process, like even losing that election, which was by like under 200 votes, which was amazing considering how much opposition I had from my own side. I learned so much and I made so many great contacts, and it pushed me in a new direction. I would not be county comptroller today if I had not lost the town board race in 2003 in Saugerties. And so I think it's important, if you feel like you have the bug for public service, to think about all of the ways to serve, and to not be cowed from, from being an active member of the community in whatever way that you can, because it turned out that I wound up being tapped later to do other things because I was politically involved from that original race. For example, we wound up flipping the legislature for Ulster County from one party to another, and I wound up getting involved in having a county charter adopted by ballot initiative, and being very active in that campaign, which was not even partisan. It was really just about structure. And that ballot initiative, which changed us to the county executive form of government, created the office of county comptroller. So for years and years, I sat by looking at the office of county comptroller and thinking, I wish the comptroller would do this. I wish the comptroller would do that. And I knew Elliot Auerbach, the former comptroller and the first comptroller for the county, because he and I served together on the Industrial Development Agency board. And when he said he was leaving, I was like, oh, now's my chance. The other thing for me is that I was very, very frustrated because I was serving in a position that would not allow me to be politically active or even vocal. Meaning, like, I couldn't even post a post to Facebook about my concerns about certain issues or candidates. And that was 2016. So I was going out of my mind. And so I felt like this is my opportunity to give back. I'm going to make this personal sacrifice right now. My kids are older, so if it's difficult and vitriolic, I can rise above it. No one is going to tell me they hate me in the grocery store with my 2-year-old on my hip. Like, and so it was a different time in my life, and I felt like I was willing to take it on. Interestingly enough, countywide office, running for countywide office was much more pleasant for me than running for town office. I found that I really tried to go out and meet people that I didn't know, in places that I wouldn't normally go. And I found that regardless of political party, regardless of geography, that people coalesce around certain things, right? They want to live in a good place. They want to feel safe there. They want opportunities for their kids. They want to be able to take care of their seniors and disabled folks. And everyone feels that way. So, the comptroller's office is it's a watchdog role. And people don't necessarily know this when they meet me, but like, I'm kind of a geek, and like, I'm perfectly happy to sit around with my spreadsheets, making graphs of financial data. And like, and I really was obsessed with kind of the finances of the county. Like, for example, one of the things that was driving me crazy was, how much money do we spend on credit cards? And does the county get points? We don't. And like day one, when I had access to the financial system, I was able to see, oh my gosh, we spent $250,000 on credit cards the year before I was elected. So that was my impetus for running, and a little bit about my experience, but I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to stop there.
Thanks very much. That was awesome. You really have seen it from both sides. So is there anyone else on that wanted to say a few words about, their experience here? Dara, have you checked in? Are there questions?
I think I read them all. One,
Okay.
somebody asked for a link, and that's been put in the chat. So that's. Can I ask a question of it's really of maybe all the commissioners as well as March, that experience of being so difficult at the local level. I would guess that's kind of typical, just because people have gone to school together, they know each other. There's all this stuff that they would know that maybe they wouldn't know when you were running at the county level. You were more of a stranger to them. And Is that correct?
So in Saugerties, you know, even though I had lived there a little bit as a child, I was mostly from Woodstock in growing up. So it wasn't that there was longstanding animosity, and I don't think it's like that in every town. I think certain towns have a lot more animosity than others. Woodstock has a lot of animosity. Saugerties has a lot of animosity, but I'm in Rosendale now, and it's not like that. So I think part of it's cultural. I'm not sure why it happens. And there is something about getting, you know, the county, you're going to more places, you're talking to more people, and people are less emotional about some of the issues, the countywide issues. I don't know what it is, but I found it really daunting. Like, it really put me off. And I don't know. It seems like, Genesis, you might have had that same experience at the county level from the party that I had when I was in the town. I mean, my feeling is like, you don't have to support me, but do you need to say that you hate me, my kid, and my mother? You know, it was like, wow, people really went over the top, and I didn't get that. And this is way before this current sort of environment that we're in. I don't know.
So
I
when
don't
I
know.
remove my commissioner hat, I wear a couple other hats, and I've seen a lot of what March experienced, where it's sort of like the get in line or get out of line. You have to be a part of the process. You can't walk in and be an outsider or be new to the process without having put in quotes your time before participating. And that's extremely unfortunate. And certainly I see changes to that system happening both sides of the aisle, really, because the people are speaking that they want to see change in how we do things. And a lot of new people are stepping up and participating. And that's why, like, jobs like Ashley's and mine are very crucial to supporting anybody who comes forward who wants to run for office and educating them on how to do it. Because sometimes you will go to a specific town party and they won't be the most receptive to allowing you to run for office, but they're not the gatekeeper. We have this process that is so beautiful, that allows you to say, well, I don't need your approval. I can go get petitions, and the people can say that I'm qualified and that I can have this opportunity to run for office and be on the ballot.
Local elections are way more personal for the candidates and for the community, which is why I love local elections, because we get to help candidates who they are my most passionate candidates. School board, we don't run the school board elections, but talk about passion. You have to be passionate about the school and the kids and in your community to be on the school board, because your constituent base as a school board member can be very difficult. Think about parents and how much they care about their kids, specifically their education they're getting, the safety of their schools. I think that's the hardest office to hold on a local level as a school board member. And they don't get paid anything. So you really have to care about it to do it. These local elections, we see more than the ones that we're going to be running this year. We see people shifting their ballot lines and who they're going to vote for. It's way less about the party that they're running on, and it's about the person that's running for office. We see that in our local elections more than any of the other ones, which is why I really like them, and it's why you get a lot of surprises in local elections. Somebody that on paper the odds are definitely stacked against them, but they are a part of their community, and people don't care what party they're running on, and they win. So it's really cool. These bigger elections, we obviously have a wider scope about what people are talking about. These are bigger issues about what the direction that the state or the country are going in. So these are bigger conversations. They also spend way more money on running for office in these elections, and it shows. And we are about to get inundated for our congressional district. It's going to be millions and millions of dollars spent from both sides over who's going to ultimately represent 750,000 people in the middle of the Hudson Valley. So it's wild. They are definitely two sides of the same coin. And for us at the boards, we have to sort of always shift our focus. Our voters are going to be more engaged this year. So that's a bigger lift for us to educate the voters on where they vote, what they're voting for. In the local elections, we are sort of helping more candidates because there's more candidates running, and they have never most of them have never run before. So I like the balance of the two. We'll see if they ever merge them all together. I know there's talk about doing just an election every other year. That's sort of taking hold, and there's interesting conversations happening about that right now, but we'll see how it goes. So we're very adaptable in that regard, but there's been lots of changes to the elections and how we run elections, even more changes coming this year. So I just thank the league for always being there and helping us amplify these issues.
That's our job. Yeah, and that's what we're all about. So we're coming up on 90 minutes, which is about right. I did want to thank everybody for coming and for all of the information and all of your sharing. Really, it was well appreciated. So the two things that I would come away with is know the rules and have a good support system if you're running for office. So and get ready.
And power through, because even when you lose, it can open doors and change things.
Oh,
That
such a
is
good
true.
point. Right.
And have fun. It is fun running for office. I've run and lost. I've never won an election that I ran for, so I still recommend doing it. You meet a lot of cool people.
That paid off for you and for us too. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great Saturday.
Me
Thank you,
too.
everybody.